Hello and welcome. I'm Eric Gao, and here's what happened this week. Taiwan's Me Too movement continued to gain momentum this past week, with accusations leveled at several prominent figures. One of those was the former head of Taiwan's disciplinary court, with a court employee accusing him of sexual misconduct at work. John Van Trieste has the details.
Politics, the arts, academia, and now the justice system. Former Chief Justice Li Bo-dao is the latest figure in Taiwan to be accused of sexual harassment. Until his retirement a few weeks ago, he headed Taiwan's Disciplinary Court, the court charged with punishing civil servants for infractions. A court employee says that during his tenure, Li harassed her 3 times. She says her superiors ignored her complaints, something the judicial branch denies.
司法院并没有收到被害人的相关申诉，所以无所谓明知并且还让他退休的事情。
Taiwan's judicial branch says it's investigating Li and will punish him if they find that the allegations are true. On Wednesday, his accuser filed a formal complaint, joining a wave of people who've recently come forward with their own stories of harassment. Women's rights activists say they expect more cases to come to light as more people in power are held accountable for their actions.
这些加害者他会持续的，就是告诉你说，我身边可能有什么样的达官贵人或重要的人士，我可以让你在某个圈子里面没有办法混下去。你其实是势单力薄，你要去对抗整个所谓的职场。
But while more victims are finding the courage to come forward and speak out, it's yet to be seen whether this will lead to zero tolerance of harassment and sexual misconduct in the workplace. James Lin and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
In another ongoing scandal, yet another kindergarten in Taiwan has been accused of drugging children, this time in the northeastern county of Yilan. At least 2 children at that school have tested positive for Ritalin. That's a brand of medication used to treat attention disorders. It is a restricted drug here in Taiwan and can only be prescribed by doctors. The school has been ordered to stop recruiting new students, and investigators are looking into where the Ritalin came from. The school says it had parental consent to administer the drug, but the head of the local health bureau suggests the school was testing it out on the kids without medical approval. Activists marked World Refugee Day on Tuesday by calling for lawmakers here in Taiwan to create laws to protect asylum seekers. Yu Jinghuang has this story.
贯彻不遣返原则，公开难民法进度。
They've been making the same demand for 18 years. And human rights groups say it's now more critical than ever for the government to take action. Local NGOs are using World Refugee Day to bring attention to the fact that Taiwan does not have a law to protect the rights of all refugees. The current law granting asylum only covers people from China, Hong Kong, and Macau.
也不应该因为他们的国籍的差异而有差别待遇。那特别是像针对乌克兰或者是缅甸的个案，其实我们的政府只有提供30天的延长签证，没有提供任何的基本的权利。然后其他国籍的人更不用讲，是连30天的延长签证都没有。
Lawmakers proposed the first Refugee Act in 2005. But nearly 2 decades later, it still hasn't been passed. Activists say the delay is putting the safety of those who seek refuge here at risk, especially those from Myanmar. Many of them were involved in Myanmar's democracy movement and came here to escape the military government's brutal crackdown. They have found a community among the 140,000 Burmese people of Chinese descent living here. But many of the asylum seekers' passports are about to expire after their home country stopped issuing documents. Human rights experts believe it's intended to suppress opposition by overseas dissidents.
然后他们利用这个方法来威逼包含在台湾、在韩国、在世界各地继续抗争、支持缅甸民主跟人权运动的人，让他们没有护照可以跨国移动，以至于让他们变成是没有身份，然后留在外国的人。
According to the government's National Human Rights Plan, the Refugee Act is slated to be passed by 2024. But activists are calling for the process to be more transparent. Taiwan has been trying to position itself as leader in human rights. How it handles refugees will be a true test of its commitment to upholding the rights of everyone. Devon Tsai and Yu Jinghuang for TaiwanPlus.
2,000 military officers graduated training on Wednesday. All three branches of the military are welcoming new soldiers into service, but this comes as Taiwan is dealing with a shortage of pilots needed to defend the country. Jaime Ocon has more.
It's graduation day. These 2,000 cadets are now officers in Taiwan's Army, Navy, and Air Force. They've taken their oaths and are ready to serve the country. Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen congratulated the men and women in uniform with a reminder to stay steadfast in the face of aggression.
刚刚我替几位毕业生代表授予军阶，在每一军阶代表的各位准备迈向军人志业的起点，同时肩负起保家卫国、守护人民的重责大任。
Shen Jiaxiang is one of the graduates from the Air Force. He's completed a rigorous training program from the U.S. military. He graduated at the top of his class and is eager to put what he's learned into practice.
在美国习得各项不同的组织架构，然后教育方式以及军事训练的模式都与台湾大庭相径。那我希望可以从美国所学的这个部分去无存菁，融合进国军的现有体制内，让国军的战力更上层次。
He also hopes he'll be in the cockpit of Taiwan's most advanced fighter jet.
目前的梦想是飞行 F-16。
Taiwan is due to add 66 of the warplanes to its fleet from the U.S. over the next few years. This new hardware, combined with pressure to replace retiring pilots, could make his dream an immediate reality. The military has been trying to recruit more soldiers like Shen, but with little success. With fewer young people interested in joining the military and a low birth rate, Taiwan is scrambling to find enough pilots for its fighter jets.
我们这个新飞行员的要能够招募，其实是非常的困难，因为刚刚有提到，在2011年到2019年，国防部在将近10年的时间内，也只不过替我们 F-16机队新增加21个人，用10年的时间只加21个人。
China's increased military pressure is putting a strain on the country's limited resources. Taiwan's Air Force is constantly scrambling fighter jets to intercept Chinese warplanes flying around its borders. And analysts say that Taiwan's struggle to recruit is just part of the problem.
这个不是扩大，比如说我们扩大招收新训飞行员就可以解决的问题。它是一个新的连队，它需要各阶的领导干部，需要一定数量的资深飞行员，然后再加上新进飞行员。所以在未来的几年当中，我们对于那个飞行员的需求会大增。
The military has been trying to address concerns that future graduating classes may not take up as much space on the graduation stage. To recruit more pilots, the Air Force has lowered standards for admission and requirements for eyesight. At the ceremony, Taiwan's president promised to raise the salary for military personnel. But analysts say that the military needs to shake up its strategy and think beyond just numbers. John Su, Sam Hui, and Jaime Ocon for TaiwanPlus.
With China's growing threats, a new poll finds that Australians would support efforts to help Taiwan if Beijing attacked the country. The poll by the Sydney-based Lowy Institute found that 80% of Australians support accepting Taiwanese refugees. A majority also backed imposing diplomatic and economic sanctions on China, sending arms and military supplies to Taiwan, and using the Australian Navy to help stop a blockade. But the poll found that Australians would not support sending troops. To tease out some of the details from that poll, our reporter Stash Butler spoke with Ryan Neelam from the Lowy Institute in Sydney.
Taiwan was listed in your poll as Australians' sort of second biggest concern. How do you explain that?
It's interesting when you look at the trend of this particular statistic. Only 3 years ago, 35% of people saw conflict over Taiwan as a critical threat to Australia's interests. Today, that figure is 65%. So it's almost doubled in the space of 3 years. And I think that reflects that people are paying attention to the rising tensions in the region.
In your poll, results show there's a bit of a tightening, a bit of a move towards more people seeing China as an economic partner versus a security threat. I mean, still more see China as a security threat than an economic partner, but there's been a narrowing there. I mean, how do you explain that?
that reflects, I think, in part, that over the last year, since the election of the Albanese government in Australia, that relations have started to thaw between Beijing and Canberra, and Australians conscious of that. We've seen glimmers of easing with some products, some trade blockages have eased, and others there's signs of potential progress. It's certainly not a whole-scale opening up, but there seems to be movement at the station, and I think that's in part what this result reflects.
How much of what we're seeing in terms of government policy and public opinion, which one is leading the other here? Are warming ties leading to kind of warming perceptions of China, or towards Taiwan, for example, or do you think it's the government being led by people's views on and fears perhaps about a conflict over Taiwan?
That's a great question, Sat, and I think actually there's always a bit of both in this. It's not a clear-cut one or the other, but we do see what we have seen, I think, is that public opinion tends to follow and be shaped by the environment around it. And part of that is what politicians on both sides say, how the relationship has played out, and what's happening in terms of how China is acting in the region towards its partners and certainly within its own borders as well.
That was Ryan Neelam from the Lowy Institute speaking with our reporter Stash Butler. A possible homicide case that shocked the country has come to a close. A teenage millionaire died just 2 hours after getting married. Investigators now say there was no foul play involved. Louise Watt has details.
After weeks of speculation, prosecutors in Taichung, central Taiwan, have ended their probe into the high-profile death of a newlywed teenage millionaire. Their conclusion: no evidence of foul play. This comes after examining over 100 pieces of evidence, including from the 10th floor balcony where the 18-year-old fell. The case has been watched closely in Taiwan because the victim, surnamed Lai, was found dead just 2 hours after registering his marriage to a real estate agent, a 26-year-old man called Xia. He now stands to inherit Lai's $16 million fortune, a property portfolio from his late father. The victim's mother says her son wasn't even gay. She hired her own investigator, who suggested Lai had been poisoned before he fell. But prosecutors say their tests ruled that out. Lai fell from Xia's apartment building. Prosecutors have decided not to indict Xia for murder after questioning other residents and checking his body for signs of a struggle. But in a twist, they are charging Xia with forgery of the marriage documents. They say the pair barely knew each other. The lawyer hired by Lai's mother welcomes that charge, but has criticized the investigation.
现场根本没有封锁采证的太慢，撞击痕啊，或者是血液喷溅的采验都没有。那我想这样子要说他就是撞到2楼，我想恐怕是稍显速断了。
Prosecutors say Lai was devastated by personal problems and the recent death of his father, implying he might have wanted to kill himself. But Lai's mother, dissatisfied with their investigation, is set to request a review, suggesting the case and the speculation around it is not over. Alex Chen and Louise Watt for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching Here's What Happened. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, relax and enjoy the rest of your weekend with these shots of dachshunds in Melbourne, Australia. They set a Guinness World Record for the biggest dog walk by a single breed. I'm Eric Gao. Take care and see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please visit us at TaiwanPlus.com.